Hello, everyone. We'll be with you shortly. We're just waiting for a few people to join, and we'll be with you momentarily. Hello, everyone. We'll be with you shortly. We're just waiting for a few more attendees to join. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Tea at 3 on Wednesdays. This week's episode is going to be a little bit different than the past weeks. We're going to talk about some outdoor time. So I'm very excited about that. I'm Richard Arnold, Director of Fun and President of Atlantic Tours. And today, Gerard MacDonald is going to be with me to talk a little bit about this trip. He's going to be your guide and host on that. And the other thing I want to mention before we begin is this session will be recorded and will be sent to all attendees that have attended, so you can re-listen later or forward on to other people. The recordings are also available on our website. You can access them there should you want to listen later. And those that will not be with us today, for some reason weren't able to join us, we'll be sending it to them as well so that they can listen to it later. If you have any questions, please put them in the question box. You'll see that on your screen, type them in, and Gerard and I will be happy to answer them at the end of the presentation. And so with that said, we're going to move right along. And this is a Cape Breton Island hiking and walking tour. And the tour itself will begin in Halifax, but keep in mind that if you don't live in Halifax and you live en route to Cape Breton, we can certainly pick you up along the route at designated pickup spots. The other thing to keep in mind is if you are from away and need a pre-night, that can be added for you very easily at the beginning or the end of this trip. This is a 5-day, 4-night getaway, and it's a small group departure. So we'll be traveling in a van like this one, a deluxe van, and the minimum for this particular trip is 6 people. And we'll go up to 9. And like I said, we can also do customized programs as well. But this is a very thought out trip. And like I said, Gerard MacDonald, I'm going to introduce you to very shortly. Came to us a while back and was interested in his retirement years and in getting out and hiking and walking. He's done that all over the world and loves to get out and explore. And so we got together and came up with this wonderful trip, and he'll be your host on this trip. So Gerard, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can walk us through this great adventure that we have planned.
Great. Thanks very much, Richard, and kudos to you for listening to my wild plan and our discussions in recent months. I'm from Ingonish originally. I'm semi-retired. I'm still working part-time, but I've been very active in outdoor stuff over the years. Whatever the season would offer, I run, I ski, I bicycle, and I hike. And as I've gotten older, I'm now officially a senior citizen. Hiking has become much more popular with me. As Richard said, I've hiked in a lot of places in the Northeast US, in the White Mountains. I've been to the Gaspé, I've been to Western Newfoundland, I've been to a lot of places. One thing that the pandemic has taught us or reinforced with me is that we have a spectacular place right in our own backyard here in Nova Scotia. I've been going to the Cape Breton Highlands since I was a child. I remember our parents piling us into a car, no seat belts required back in the 60s. And we always had this annual trip around the Highlands, and it was spectacular. I actually worked up there for a few years and in the 80s. And since then, I've been going back at least twice a year to enjoy it. And some of you who are in the tourism industry probably know this, but Cape Breton is considered one of the top islands to visit in the world. It is always in the top 5 in the Condé Nast best island, and I believe they were #1 in the Americas in 2019. So just a little general thing about this tour. It's going to be a 5-day tour. There's going to be travel days on both sides, but we're going to have some interesting stops coming and going. But the real meat will be over the next 3 days. Now,
and Gerard, a real great time of the year to be going. This tour departs on August the 9th. So what a great time to be in Cape Breton Island.
Absolutely. And in time to get the tour done before we have to deal with lovelorn moose in the late fall, I should add. So anyway, if your idea of a tour is to be, escorted, have some very interesting hikes, but at the end of the day, come back to a hot shower, a delicious meal, and a comfortable bed, this is the tour for you. If, however, you like to hike with backpacks for 12 hours at a time, sleep on the ground, eat freeze-dried food, and dig a hole in the ground to do your business, then you're listening to the wrong tour.
This is certainly not roughing it, Gerard. It's a good deluxe tour, and I will say that all the meals, even the lunches, so breakfast, lunch, and dinner are included in the price, as well as the excellent accommodations you're going to be shown here shortly.
Great. So if you look at the map here, Cape Breton looks like, Nova Scotia looks like a lobster claw, and Cape Breton is a lobster, and Cape Breton is a lobster claw. So if you want to focus on the next slide, and the Cape Breton Highlands are indicated there, that is actually the Cabot Trail route, and it's about 300 kilometers. So once we get to Bedeque, we're basically going to be circling in and out of the highlands. So that just gives you an idea. Very fascinating from a geologic point of view too. The Cape Breton Highlands really are a portion of the Appalachians, which run from Georgia all the way to Newfoundland, and you're going to see some spectacular scenery as we go there. Next slide, Richard. So a little bit about the first day. As Richard mentioned, we'll pick people up in Halifax or points east. And it's about a 5-hour drive from there to Ingonish, where we will be spending, the next 3 nights. So we're not going to drive for 5 hours straight and stop for a Tim Hortons coffee. We're going to stop somewhere just before we get to the Strait of Canso. And this is an overview of one of the places where we may actually stop for lunch, and it's a beautiful site. We're basically in Ulls Cove there, and we'd be crossing the causeway. Next slide, Richard. And this, again, is another picture of the Canso Causeway, which was actually completed in the year of my birth in 1955. Last time I checked, they didn't have my nameplate on it, but it's still a pretty impressive thing. If you look in the background there, I think they blasted over 10 million tons to build this causeway, which is the deepest in the world. So next slide, Richard. So we're going to have another stop in Bedeque, and I'm really looking forward to this stop. It's a beautiful little town, but one of the highlights will be that we're going to do a kayak ride there in Bedeque, right in the downtown Bedeque. And there is an hour and a half, very easy, user-friendly. If you haven't kayaked, it doesn't matter. And we're going to hike out to a place called Kidston Island. And as long as the currents are not too strong, we'll actually kayak around there. And I've done this kayak ride several times, and they provide you with hot tea and scones along the way where you pull up at a beach. So that would be a very pleasant stop in Bedeque.
One of my favorite things, Gerard, about Bedeque is the oat cakes. I always love those as well. I always have to stock up with my oat cakes when I'm in Cape Breton for coming back home. Certainly a beautiful area, and that bay is so sheltered that generally you don't need to worry about getting out, but there's always that possibility, and we'll have a wonderful time.
That's good. So here is just people pulling up at Kidston's Island. So there may be other people there, but there's a lovely sandy beach, and if the waters are calm, it'll just be lovely. So next slide, Richard. So once we leave Bedeque at St. Anne's, then we go into the Cape Breton Highlands. And for those of you who have been over Smoky, it's a very daunting, steep hill. When I lived there, I used to go over Smoky twice a week, summer and winter. And I can probably share a few hair-raising stories of some of the trips I did there, but very, very beautiful countryside.
And actually last year, Gerard, they did a nice renovation. Now we even have a nice pull-off on Cape Smoky.
Yes, that's right. Because before, the only time you could really have a look was when you're coming back the other way. We are going to be going counterclockwise around the Cabra Trail, so I'm really looking forward to that stop. And then finally, we arrive at Ingonish Beach, absolutely beautiful beach, which is essentially next to Celtic Lodge, where we're going to be staying for 3 nights. And this is just an air view. Richard very kindly ran down there last week with his drone and took this overhead picture for us. Celtic Lodge, interesting history. It was first owned by an industrialist from the U.S., from Akron, Ohio. He was I'd say he was not only a robber baron, but a rubber baron. And his name was, I believe, was Corson. And he brought his wife down there so that she could take the airs and hopefully help her TB. So it was in the family until the late 30s, early 40s. And at that point, the national park was created, and the government ended up expropriating it from that family. And subsequent, during the war, this facility was built. And for those of you who've been down there, there's a spectacular golf course there designed by Stanley Thompson.
Gerard, it's certainly one of my favorite places to stay. I absolutely love Celtic Lodge, and the views from there, and you can see the pool and the amenities, and for the walkers and hikers, there's no shortage of things to do there. But as you said, one of the top golf courses, once again, certainly in North America, here in Nova Scotia, in Cape Breton Island.
Yeah, beautiful spot. Okay, next slide. And this just shows one of the rooms. Now there is the main lodge, and then there's the Birch Cove Inn. So I'm not sure where we will be, but in either place, they're very comfortable, and they'll have all the amenities, including including Wi-Fi.
And based on your booking arrangements, the bedding will be supplied based on whatever you ask. If you want 2 beds or 1, that'll all be arranged when you make your reservation.
Mm-hmm. So this is not on the schedule, but in the evening, if I haven't exhausted you all day long with hiking, there's a lovely short walk directly from the Celtic Lodge out into the Middlehead Peninsula, and that way you can see actually both sides of Ingonish Harbour and then North Ingonish. A lot of seabirds there. It's not uncommon to see whales breaching in that area. So that's a nice little thing that you can do after dinner. I'd be happy to escort people, but a lot of people can do this on their own.
That's a good thing for me to mention to the folks as well, Gerard, is that, like any vacation you have with us, you do what you want to do or not do what you don't want to do. So, with any of these activities, we like to have a full itinerary, but should you decide some morning you don't want to go and do something, then you're welcome to do that, as long as it's a day that we're staying put at the same resort. If you were here and just wanted to relax for the day, there's nothing stopping you from doing that if they didn't want to join you on any of the outings. Now, I can't imagine if you're a walker or a hiker not wanting to do all these experiences, but I always like to just mention that because, sometimes one member of the family likes a lot more activity than the other member of the family. So that flexibility is available. So the next day, we're going to start off and tell us a little bit about how this day is going to work.
That's right. So basically, I'm going to do roughly 2 hikes a day, maybe 3, but the average distance, total for the day is probably going to be close to 10 to 12K. So the morning hike will be the longer hike. So plan on hiking for about 2 hours, 2.5 hours or so. We're going to have stops for lunch. We may do it as a box lunch along the way, but there in the area, there's some lovely small cafes and beaneries where we can grab food on the fly. The afternoon hikes generally would be shorter and a little bit easier, so don't be too daunted. So the first day, we're going to go up Franey Mountain. It's described as moderate to difficult, but I don't want you to be intimidated by the word difficult. There are some hills to climb, but with reasonable fitness and good footwear, the trails are extremely well marked. So you don't need to worry about bringing your carabiners and ropes for this one. It will not be necessary. This is a spectacular view from Franey, where we're actually looking out and you can see in the distance Middle Head, and it's just spectacular. I think we have one other slide there, Richard, and this is another view from the top, which again you can, if you look out, you can see Middle Head where Celtic Lodge is. Over to the right, we're seeing Cape Smoky, and then down below the Ingonish area. But it's truly a beautiful place. And if you like looking at wildlife, I've been up there twice now, and I've seen moose up there on both occasions. So you may be able to get yourself a moose. So we're going to have a light lunch somewhere, and then the afternoon is going to be a little easier. This is going to be a very short stop. It's called Marianne Falls. It's a beautiful falls. There are toilet facilities there, and in fact, in many of the trailheads, there are toilet facilities, so you don't need to be too worried about that. This is Marianne Falls. There's some stairs down. If you want to dip in, have a swim, you can have a brief swim, but there's another opportunity to have a swim after that. Next slide, Richard. Excuse me. So this is Warren Lake. This will be the second hike of the day. It's a fairly easy hike. It's dead flat. It takes about an hour and a half to go around it. Lots of opportunities to see some wildlife there. And the nice plus is at the end of it, there's a lovely sandy beach. So we're going to ask you to bring your bathing suits that day. We can stash them in the van. There's places to change and some bathroom facilities. But at the end of a long day, particularly if it's warm, it's just a lovely spot to have a dip. Next slide there, Richard.
So then we'll go back to the hotel that night for a nice dinner again, and then start off your day 3 getaway. And one of my favorite places to go to. I love Neil's Harbor. Talk to the fishermen. It's just beautiful there.
Yeah, well, Neil's Harbor is one of my favorites, Richard, for a couple of reasons. First of all, I actually worked in Neil's Harbor for about 3 years, and I actually left Neil's Harbor with a souvenir. My wife, Karen. It's interesting. I got to know some people there, and in the evenings we used to go up once a week to the high school cabin and play volleyball, and that's where I first met Karen. Karen is probably the worst volleyball player I've ever seen, but she's a great person, and we're still married 38 years later, and I've forgiven her for her lack of volleyball abilities.
We all have our specialties.
we all have our specialties. So before we go on our hike, we're going to take a little drive off the Cabot Trail. We're going to go in behind Neil's Harbor through a place called White Point and South Harbor, and it's one of the best kept secrets. It's not on the Cabot Trail, but the scenery is spectacular as you approach South Harbor. So I really think you're going to enjoy that. Once we get back onto the trail, we're going to just double back at just a few K, and our big hike of the day is going to be Micah Hill. And I would call it easy to moderate. It's a climb, but it's a very, very gradual climb. And when you get up to the top there, again, you have a spectacular view looking towards the Aspy Fault and northern Cape Breton. And on a clear day, you can oftentimes see St. Paul's Island from there. But it's an absolutely beautiful spot. They used to do some mica mining back there many years ago, and you can still see some of the mica deposits in the area. After we do that, we're going to stop and again have a nice lunch. And I do have a place picked out that I think you're going to enjoy. If you liked home baked goodies, home baked snacks and meals. Anyway, I will tell you about that when that time comes. After that, we're going to take a drive up to Bay St. Lawrence and around to Meat Cove, which is one of the legendary, beautiful places to see in Cape Breton. It's clearly off the beaten track. Meat Cove itself is I think it's the most northerly community in there. And I can remember going on some hair-raising rides there in the summertime. The roads are much better, but if you have a little bit of vertigo for steep cliffs, then I suggest you avert your eyes on some of these, but spectacular. And there's a lovely hike at the end there. And again, these things are optional. If you just want to sit in a lawn chair and sit and watch the scenery, that's fine. But this is well worthwhile doing this hike up to Meat Cove Mountain. And then that will conclude that day. Then we're going to go back to Celtic Lodge for one more night. And then on day 4, we're going to complete the other part of the Cabot Trail, where we head north to Cape North and then head east. There's a series of big mountains there that we're going to go over, including North Mountain, Mackenzie Mountain, and French Mountain. If you haven't seen your moose on Franey, then there's a very good chance you're going to see moose on this part of the tour. We're going to have a brief stop at Marianne Falls. So the good news is that we don't need to go on a 9K hike to see this. We can actually drive up to this one early in the morning and get out and have a look at the Marianne Falls, which is just a very beautiful place. Next slide, Richard. So along the way, you're going to see, again, some spectacular scenery. You have these almost rift valleys. I mean, I'll talk a little bit about the geology on the trip, but as I mentioned, the Appalachian mountain range goes through there, and with glaciation and erosion, there's spectacular canyons and things that have developed. So, and we'll have ample opportunities to stop and take pictures along the way. Next slide. Now, this is probably one of the gems of the hikes. And the good news is that it's a relatively easy flat hike out to Skyline. I've been there so many times. I was there in January of this year. I went with a buddy, and it was one of those spectacular, clear, very cold days, but the wind had blown a lot of the snow off, and we were able to essentially walk out there in hiking boots. We didn't need snowshoes, but it's spectacular.
Well, and I've done it many times, and I love the view back towards Shetty Camp, and just watching the vehicles go on the road are stunning. And it's one of those spots where I don't think I've ever not seen a moose of some sort, when I'm on that walk. And like I said, it's a beautiful one.
Yeah, so before you go to the next slide, if you follow the yellow brick road there to the very end, that's where this next picture was taken. And this is my daughter, Sarah, who had been home from Toronto. This was a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic. And you can see in the background, we see part of French Mountain. And then in the next backdrop, you can see a little bit of Shetty Camp Island, which is where we'll be heading in that direction that day. But man, I mean, there's some things, you can't capture these things in pictures. You just have to stand there and take it in.
Well, and the other thing that I often see when I go out there, Gerard, is the whales. You don't need to be out on a boat tour to see them. They're right there. You can see them pretty clearly when they.
Yeah. So we'll continue on our way, and this is just a further continuation. We're coming off French Mountain at this point. I believe this is called Trout Brook, but Corny Brook is quite close by. And again, just another view. I never get tired of looking at these views. So we're going to stop at Corny Brook, and that will be, I guess, our third hike of the day. Excuse me. It's a lovely walk along a river. It's called Lezère, Rivière Lezère is what the Acadians call it. And it's a rift canyon, which basically means there's 3 walls. So there's only one way to get in, and there's only one way to get out. And at the end of it, you're treated to a lovely waterfall, and there's some benches there where you can relax. Next slide. So at the end of our day, we finally arrive into Shetty Camp, which is one of the Acadian communities in Cape Breton Island. Most of the Acadians here came after the Le Grand Dérangement, or the expulsion of the Acadians in 1755. And a lot of them were transported, but a lot of them snuck away to areas such as the Magdalen Islands, and some of them made their way to Shetty Camp, and they were far enough away from Halifax that they were left. But a beautiful, beautiful little community.
Yes, it sure is. We're going to overnight at the Cornerstone Motel. So this will be quite a change from Celtic Lodge, but it's a necessary change to allow us to do some more hiking. And it's a lovely little spot. A little bit of what the rooms look like. And we'll overnight there and have some dinner. And then the next day it's off to do the gypsum mines.
That's right. So this will be your last day, but planned a couple of stops along the way. Will actually be a very quick one. It's called the Gypsum Mines Quarry and Trail, and it's actually up in behind Shetty Camp. We're actually out of the park at this point, but I've been there several times, and I was there in the winter, and where that woman is on the rock, there was a little bit of ice on the rock, and I end up using some crampons to get up to the top of that. You don't have to climb to the top of the rock. In fact, it's a very easy walk to this. And it was a gypsum mine, but it's still a very impressive looking site. So we will be doing that first off in the morning. And the next area we're going to go through as we leisurely make our way back to Halifax is we're going to drive through the Margaery Valley. And I'm not a fisherman, but they tell me this is one of the premier salmon fishing rivers in the world. I don't know if you can shed any more information on that, Richard. I'm not a fisherman.
Well, certainly it's very popular, and generally, when I've toured the Cabot Trail over my 30-some years of doing this, you always see the fishermen in the river, so that they're there for a reason. So like yourself, I'm not much of a fisherman either, but it is a beautiful river, the Margaery, and the drive through here is quite impressive.
Great. Now, our next, we may have a quick coffee and oatcake stop. There's a place in the Margaery Valley area, and they call them goat cakes, not oat cakes. So that will become clear to you when we get there, but that will just be a brief stop. The next stop as we make our way towards Lake Ainslie is an area called Egypt Falls. And this is really one of the most popular places to hike in Cape Breton. The good news is that it's a very, very short hike. The bad news is that it can be that it's steep. And they do have ropes to let you down, but I was actually looking at the TripAdvisor and All Trails guide this morning, and a 66-year-old woman had said it was quite doable for a mature, healthy person. So I'm hoping we'll have enough mature people to join us, and I don't anticipate there'll be any issues. That's another place to have a quick dip and a swim. So
and then we're back to Halifax.
Go ahead. Yep.
So I'm going to check to see if we have any questions, but one of the ones that we have is, why would you want to hike?
My answer would be, why wouldn't you want to hike? I mean, we have this beauty in our background. And as I mentioned before, one thing that the pandemic has forced people to stay put and discover a little bit more of their province. I mean, I've done this stuff for many years, but I've been back several times to Cape Breton since the pandemic took place. And it's just something I never get tired of doing. One thing, Richard, I made a couple little notes just so I could remind myself. Some people may ask, well, what level of fitness do you need to have for this? Well, this is not technical hiking. Sensible hiking boots or trail shoes or trail sneakers are really all you need. You do have to do some climbing. There is some climbing, so the expectation is that there's some level of fitness, but this is really geared towards people from their 40s to their 60s and maybe even a little bit older if they have a reasonable level of fitness. So I don't anticipate any problems there. One thing I've been using last few years for the first time is a walking stick, and it's great having that I call it the third leg. And when you're climbing and when you're descending, it's great to have that walking stick because you're really, it can take it can do a number on your knees. So I would strongly recommend that.
That brings a good question. What else should people be bringing along? What do you need to bring with you as far as to be comfortable for these walks and hikes? That's why I'm using the term walks and hikes, because what I found over the years that many of our seniors are out walking and very fit and active. So what would you bring with you?
Sure. Well, because the hikes are broken up during the day with lunch breaks, you certainly don't have to take a big day pack with you. It's recommended that you have at least a small day pack where you can include some of the essentials that you need. Clothing is one of the things. There's a Scandinavian saying that there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing choices. So, and for those of you who've been hikers, I mean, that you should always have a rain shell or something with you. But even if it's a rainy day, the hikes will go forward. So you want to have some proper clothing. I already talked about having proper footwear. This is not something you want to do with flip flops or sandals. Some of the other items besides I talk about trekking poles or walking sticks is water bottles, having some trail snacks, sunscreen, hat, sunglasses, insect repellent, and then any other personal items you may need, toiletries or hand sanitizer. And of course, if you're a bird watcher or whatever, you may want to take your binoculars along and absolutely, take a camera along. I will be bringing a little first aid kit along. So, for the scratches and bites and stings and stuff like that, we should be able to cover that. And, a lot of people worry about, the potty breaks and when you can take breaks. I think there's going to be enough times during the day, before, during, and after, and at the trail sites where there will be at least some privies there. So if there's a concern about that, I just want to alleviate it.
Well, I always tell everyone to dress like an onion. So bring that layering just in case you might need it or whatever the case may be. But the good thing is that we're doing, specific areas each time, because one of the concerns you always have on the Cabot Trail is, French Mountain can be beautiful and sunny, and North Mountain, you can't see the hand in front of your face. So, there is the nature of the change in weather as you do the Cabot Trail. But like I said, we're concentrating on various areas each day. So I think we'll look after all the needs there.
Yeah, I mean, I've done the Cabot Trail in so many ways over the years. I have bicycled around it 3 times. There was something called the Cabot Trail Relay, which I participated in a number of times over the years. I've done all the crazy active stuff. And I have to admit, as I get old, like the hiking is superb, because you finally get a chance to slow down and stop and look and smell the roses. So I hope to be hiking until I can't.
Well, thank you for that great overview of this wonderful new trip. We're excited to have it as part of our offering, and you're going to see more coming in 2022 and beyond. And like I said, we can also customize these for any of the groups out there. And so with that said, I'm going to conclude and thank you for today, Gerard, and we'll hope to see you in August of this year on our inaugural walking and hiking trip. Next week, we'll be back for Tea at 3 on Wednesday. We're going to do a talk about river cruising with Alma Waterways. My good friend Sandra Gardner will be along with me. And then in the following weeks, and what we'll be covering on the river cruises are the 3 cruises that I'm hosting in 22, and also we'll be launching our new cruise for 23. Early in June, that particular week, it's going to be the Washington Cherry Blossom Festival coming in 22, and basically the ones coming up are, as we continue to dream, we're on our right side of COVID, we believe at this point, and we'll be traveling again in 22 and 23. So we're showcasing some of those great trips coming up. Norwegian Cruise Lines is going to be on to talk about big ship cruising and the changes that have been made there on June 9th. June 16th, one of my favorite destinations is Old Cape Cod. It's our getaway to Cape Cod that we tend to do every year. And so Donna will be on with me on that particular one. Donna Williams, one of our tour directors that was on with me when we did the Magdalen Islands. And then I'll be talking about, we have the wrong date on a couple of these, June, sorry, that's the date of the presentation, June 23rd. 2021 is going to be our Ireland and Scotland trip that I'll be hosting in April of 23, and it's a great itinerary. So thank you all for continuing to support us by coming out to Tea at 3 on Wednesdays. And if you have any questions at all, Peggy would love to hear from you in reservations, and please send us any questions also by email at reservations@atlantictourist.com, and we'll get right back to you. And we will be sending out the recordings in the coming days, and let us know other topics that you might want us to cover in the coming months. So thanks again, Gerard, and we look forward to seeing everyone on board next week.
Bye now.